melt is when I'm ocean waves.
Well, tonight on Nova Legends podcast, I have our Mother's Day edition of our coaches panel on the eve of the district tournament play. And as a matter of fact, the Patriot District is already in tournament play. Coach Burke will tell us all about it. And I got with me today, I've got Coach Sean Burke from Woodson back with me again. Also back with me again is John Millward from Lewis High School. And meeting Coach Jimmy for the first time. My son, Chandler Brown, played in the midfield for Yorktown the last 2 years. So I've seen your work, and I really enjoyed watching the teams go at it. Nice to meet you, Coach. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Likewise.
Okay. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, the soccer season, the high school season is really crammed into a couple of months of intense practice games. And then, the games don't even mean all that much, especially in the Occoquan region, because every team qualifies for regionals. In the Liberty, Coach Jimmy has a big elimination game tomorrow because only the top 4 teams go. So the first game is the elimination game. But anyway, the last couple months, you guys have been getting your teams together. And I remember my son going through this last year with Yorktown. When you go to the postseason and your season's over, this is some of the last meaningful soccer these kids will ever play in their lives in terms of crowds, starting lineups, games really mean anything. I mean, there's intramurals, there's men's leagues. Some of the kids will play Division III, but this is really it for them. So this is a really exciting time to be a soccer fan. I can't wait to go out and watch the games. But let me introduce the coaches again. Let them talk a little bit about themselves. Coach Jimmy, we're meeting you for the first time. Tell us a little bit about your background, when you started coaching, if you played. I know your brother's at Wakefield, and also a little bit about your team this year.
So this is my 24th year at WNL.
Wow.
I've been coaching for 24 years, and my first coaching job was at the girls' assistant at Wakefield, and that was in towards the end of, I think it was 98 or 97. And then I was at George Mason High School, one of the first seasons that they went to the spring, and because they used to play in the fall, and they were single A. And this was before single A kind of was really, I guess what it is now, but it was the first year in the spring. And so got the head coaching job there. And then we won an unofficial state championship, according to VHSL. But it was, like I said, single A. And then in 99, I switched over to WNL. I had a friend of mine was at Yorktown, who's Guillermo Cifuentes, Gizmo. And then another good friend of mine who was actually my coach my senior year, Arturo Jimenez, he was at Wakefield. And so, we worked with each other at Wakefield. And so then he was like, yeah, you should apply for this job and see how it goes. So luck would have it, I would get the gig, and I've been there ever since. I played locally. I grew up in the area, went to Wakefield, went to parochial school before that. And then I went to, at a high school, I went to Montgomery College. I skipped kind of set out a year, I guess you could say, after high school. And then I went to Montgomery College. And then from there, I played a year. And then I was at Maryland for 2 years after that. But then other than that, I really didn't play much else. And just, kind of started playing around here in the local leagues, with some men's leagues and other guys that I grew up playing with, but always coaching. I worked in DC public schools, and then I came back to Arlington. And then I was a stay-at-home dad for about 7 years. But the whole time I stayed coaching, and that was thankfully to my wife, who was like, yeah, that's your thing. So you continue to coach. And, it's been a good ride. I'm looking forward to the next, 24 years. Still have
there you go.
At WNL. But yeah, I'm not, some people have asked, and even friends have asked, have any college coaches come and ask you, or schools, this, and that. I was like, no, it's been interesting to try to see if I could do that. But then I was like, no, my roots are here. My family's here. Everything is here. There's really no need to kind of uproot everybody and go chase something that, would be interesting. But again, I really enjoyed coaching high school. I enjoyed working with the kids in the building as well. And, for me, just it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. And, coaching on the travel side, I did for a little bit with Annandale, and then a little bit with Bo. Way back geez, I think I coached the U13 team in Arlington. Same thing, like in the late '90s. But yeah, I mean, high school it's been a lot of fun, to me, that's what keeps me coming back, keeps me young, despite all this gray hair. But and the beard, right? Sean, we've seen a little bit more of that gray coming in as well. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what's been going on. And luckily, we've had the fortune of having quite a few kids come through the program that have been pretty good soccer players. The demographic has definitely changed at WNL. When my first team picture, I have a lot of team pictures in my office, and the first team picture is predominantly Hispanic kids with one or two, white kids sprinkled in there. And now the team is mostly American kids with, still about 5 or 6 Hispanic kids. But it's changed. It's changed a lot, and but the philosophy is still there, and the talent is still there. I think now, it's just you have to handle kids differently. But it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Well, Coach, last year your team, and I know your team really well. Unfortunately, sometimes I learned the hard way. But your team was you had a very experienced team. You had a senior laden team last year. Very, very strong, very big in the back, very physical in the back. You had midfielders like Freddie Vargas in midfield. You had a really dynamic left wing. I can't think of his name. But your team was very senior laden. One of the top teams in the area most of the year. This year, I assume you have some young players. I think you had a couple sophomores in the midfield. Compare your last year's team with this year's team.
Last year's team, like you said, was pretty. I mean, we had guys. Some of those seniors had been on the varsity team since their sophomore year, so they did have a little bit more experience. Have been in a sense tested some. And so those guys kind of were on a mission, just like all our teams are. Once you have that target on your back, and teams, want to come after you. And I keep telling them, like, we're going to get a lot of schools. We're going to get their best games because, we've made a name for ourselves and we're always competitive. I don't think we're always the best team, but as long as we're competitive, I think that's the biggest thing for me is just making sure that these guys have a good time while they're playing high school ball. And but that team was very experienced. A lot of guys have been playing a lot of time during their sophomore and junior year. But they had a focus, and I think this year the team is fairly young meaning in a sense that they don't have a lot of experience. I mean, we have quite a few juniors. We are graduating 11 seniors, and I think 2 or 3 sophomores. So both keepers are seniors, pretty much my back line are seniors, stuff like that. So I think this group, when this group comes back, I think it'll be kind of the same thing. Some of those guys have been around for now the second year. They've come through the program, some of them since their freshman year. So I think now they understand it. I think, they could see at the games like, oh, okay, yeah, we're 17-0. This happens all the time. Like, no, it doesn't. This is something that you really have to work for. Just because you put the jersey on doesn't mean we're going to come out and just win games. And I think they're starting to find that out. I think it was a big shock to them kind of when we lost our first game, and they're like, oh, we already lost one, and, it's our first game. And so for me, that was good. I think if last year's team would have lost the game, I think during the regular season or something like that, I think we would have had a different result. I think we would have, probably gone further having a loss, but they never suffered a loss. They was like, oh, okay, we can pull every game out. And sometimes I think when, we had, I think 1 or 2 games that went in overtime. I think the last few games with McLean and Centerville, they sat back. We had to be patient. We had to figure some things out. But I think this team was like, yeah, we'll just throw on a jersey and we'll win 17 games again. I'm like, no, that's not it. And, like they kind of tend to think that, but no, I think now they get it. Now they understand kind of, what it means to play for WNL, for boys soccer, and kind of the expectation that's there. And not necessarily from us and not definitely from me. I always tell them, as long as we're competitive, as long as we're in there, I think we'll do well. But I think, sometimes the community and even school staff, people are like, well, you lost 2 games, a tough season, huh? I'm like, geez, it's 2 games. It's like you lose 2 games and everybody's, man, that's a tough season. Yeah, it's not bad.
You feel like Doc Rivers walking around there. Lose couple. Hey, well, thanks, Coach. Well, let's go to Coach Burke. Last year, Coach Sean, you told me that it's all about culture. And you got to build that culture. and then late in the year you gotta hope it's clicking. And I know you did beat the heck out of Bo early, but you suffered your lumps early. But you won your last 5 games, so you really could not be going into the postseason in better form than you are. So tell us a little bit about your season and your team this year.
Yeah. I mean, I still think, and Jimmy, what Jimmy said is exactly true. It's like you create the culture and kids buy in, and you work these things out. And yeah, we got lucky against Bo. We had like 7 minutes of good soccer. And we scored like 3 goals, and then Bo was just like, "What the hell just happened?" I was like, "I don't know." So we're up 4-1, Bo. Sorry, but I'll take that anytime I can. But we have won 5 in a row, but I think like every coach this time of year, it's like, okay, what happened this weekend? Woodson just had its prom last night. I'm just like texting the guys, hydrate, sleep. And they're like, oh yeah, we're hydrating. I was like, no, not that kind of hydrating. Hydrating. So like, to me, it's like, we've been on a bit of a hot streak lately, but it's time of year. It just takes one banger to solve, all the problems, and you're done. You can be kicked out in 2 seconds if you're not defending properly. So for me, this is like nervous time of year. And Jimmy's absolutely correct. Like, this is what separates high school from club. I never have a pit in my stomach 3 or 4 days before a club game. Never, even for state cup, back in the old days when it actually mattered and actually was something of relevance. Even back then, like, I wouldn't be nervous on a Thursday before a state cup on a Saturday, knowing the final would be Sunday. But high school, there's just so many variables. And the great thing is everything has been filmed now. So if I want to go watch Jimmy or John's team, I just cop on, NFHS or whatever it is, and watch the games. So now, like,
terrible videography, but
it gives you some pieces, So like, you're not flying blind anymore. So like, to me, like, that adds a layer of tactical stuff that comes in here. So culture is important, but at the same time, now coaches, we have to find ways to like reinvigorate our kids to be like, okay, tactics are always important, but now they're really important. And sometimes because club is so different, it's hard to convince the younger kids, hey, you're going to cry like a baby when this is done. And they don't believe you. And yeah, like I was talking to the boys on Friday, and I started to get emotional just trying to tell them, like, from now on, boys, like, we are family and we need to be together as long as possible. Another 3 weeks. Everyone else is secondary. Your AP exams were secondary. Your classes are secondary. I know an administrator is going to watch this and be like, yeah, we should fire Sean Burke. What kind of counselor is he did? But like, at the end of the day, all of us remember our last soccer games. We all remember it. I cried all over my dad's jacket when I was in college. And like, I remember walking home in tears in high school. So like, this time of year is really exciting for me. But no, I do feel good that we're on a roll, but we have to play South County. And they're just crushing teams right now. So it's going to be quite an interesting battle for us. But for me, we have a ticket to regionals. And I know Jimmy wants that more than anything. So does John. Knock off those first games and whatnot. So at the end of the day, actually, John, you're in, right? You're on that.
Hey, but next year's different. Next year.
Okay. Yeah. So for Jimmy, he's the one sweating the most in this conversation. But because anything can go wrong. I mean, Jimmy's had so much talent and so much success that I think it is right. Everyone assumes, oh yeah, Washington and Lee, they'll be there in the end. And that's a lot of pressure for him to deal with. That's not easy. That's why he's got more gray than John.
So Coach, you were talking about players crying. I don't think they really know what it's like. I remember my last basketball game. I was a basketball player, Coach Jimmy. And I went out and talked to Coach Bo's team a few weeks ago. And I was telling them about when McLean beat us last year in the regional semifinal. So we won that game. We were guaranteed a state tournament berth again.
Yeah.
Con, I can't think of his last name, from McLean, hit this banger. And my son Chandler had rotated to the 10, and he chased him 65 yards down the field, but he cut his run off because they had their shape. He didn't need to go all the way back. And Con caught the ball and hit a banger over the goalie. That's the play he'll always remember. And so I was telling the Langley players, don't have that feeling like my son. The game was not his fault. He played great, but don't have that play where you could have done a little bit more, because it could be your last meaningful game. And when I was telling the story, I almost started crying, telling the story about my son. So they are going to mean a lot. Well, let's get Coach John here. Last year, Lewis had a magical run. One of the greatest moments I've ever experienced as a sports fan, when Byron Benegas made that goal that put the game into overtime. I mean, I'm just so glad I braved the rain and I was there for that moment. It was the most one of the most amazing moments I've ever experienced. But John, your team was magical. You had a great right back, Steven Velasquez, a great goalie. So you had to retool. You had a lot of seniors last year. I know some of them play for Marymount. So tell us about transitioning to this year and about your team this year.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Julian. So we had 13 kids graduate. Lucky enough to send 4 of them onto the college ranks, 3 of which are playing for Coach Kalen over at Marymount, and had very impactful roles on their trip to a conference championship for the first time in their school history. Byron, it's hard to replace an All-American goalie. Jimmy had an All-American last year. It's hard to replace him. It's hard to replace a goalie, especially like that. But luckily blessed to have a guy that backed him up for the 2 years prior. And so Jason Rios has really stepped up big for us. As a junior, he hasn't had a lot of minutes in game, but he's been legitly going through some regiments and some rigors, and has been able to kind of lead us into the position we're on right now. We've slipped up sometimes here in the past. Post spring break, pre-spring break, we slipped up against Westfield and their big wide pitch, just like Yorktown. But we were able to kind of recapitalize and refocus, and we're able to luckily win a tiebreaker based on our district parameters to end up second seed in our district. So we'll be hosting on Monday and hopefully represent our side of the bracket, and either match up with a Hayfield or a Falls Church or Edison or Annandale here. Come here on Friday.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Coach. Well, let's talk about the different districts. The only district is not represented here, I think, is Concorde, I believe. But let's start with national, Coach John. I know that offline, Coach John and I talked about Hayfield had a really nice year. I think surprisingly so, because I think they were pretty much 500 last year. So talk a little bit about the national district, and then Coach Jimmy and Coach Sean can chime in, because I know Coach Jimmy played against Hayfield, and I'm sure Coach Sean played against some of those teams as well.
No, absolutely. No, so I think it's going to be it's a pretty good run from the national district this year. We have a lot of teams that are very complimentary with regards to sort of the parity in the district. Outside of the district, goal differential is a lot higher than inside the district. We're seeing a lot of 1, 2, 3 goal games, but again, decided by 1 or 2 goals. We're not seeing a lot of blowouts. Hayfield is the exception. They've had a great year, whether it's based on matchup of the day or just their performances. We feel that we're excited to potentially match up for them to see who mano a mano is. But at the end of the day, I think the national district is going to be able to compete with the Patriot District. Coming for you, Sean.
I'm not happy about that, but yes.
But the best part is again, as a holistic event over the 16 teams in our region, the longevity for most of the coaches, it's very cordial yet competitive. You know what I mean? Like, so everybody wants to win, but yet at the same time, we're looking out for the best interest of our kids. Like, so everybody wants to have the best performances ever. And so it's like, let's get the best matchups out there. We don't want to see what we did last year. We bottled a 1 versus 8 matchup and completely lost the district and had to go fight our way through a terrible, terrible side. I would hate to see Hayfield do that, but I'd love to be able to host on Friday. Just saying.
Thanks, Coach. Coach Jimmy, now I believe you guys played Hayfield early this year. What did you think? What did you think about Hayfield?
They were a good side. I mean, Dan, I've known Dan for a long time, and when WNL was part of the national district, even back then, and then he jumped on and started coaching. So they've always had talent. It's just kids. They really, if they buy into what he's trying to do, I think they'll have, the success that they're having now. So they're a good side. They knocked it around fairly well. I think for us, it was one of those things where we were trying to do some things that we hadn't done in a long time as far as formation and getting guys familiar with what their roles were. But I mean, they still knocked it around well. I think, the success that they've had is no accident. So, I saw a pretty good team, going forward. I mean, they had some, I think, small issues in the back, and I don't know if they fixed them or not, but, it's like one game you have this kid in one spot and the team looks fantastic, and then he picks up an injury or he picks up a knock and you have to put another kid there. And it's like, trying to plug a dam because there's so many holes that you don't know where to plug. You know what I mean? So I think it just really depends on sometimes, what kids are available and what you got and what you got going. Because I think with high school soccer, you really only need good 3 or 4 boys out of the 11 that are really good, that are studs. And then you have, the other 6 or so boys that are starting are role players. They're guys that know their job, defend well or, go to goal or whatever the case may be. But I think with his team, he has some kids that can really knock the ball around well.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Coach. How about Coach Sean?
It's great this year. So we scrimmaged Lewis, as always, last couple of years, which is great. And I believe we lost that, but it's good for us to deal with this attacking mentality.
On a free kick bullshit thing, like
whatever it may be. So and then we scrimmage Hayfield, and exactly what the guys are talking about. Like Hayfield knocks it around. They're fine. Maybe their backs aren't great, but they're certainly good enough. They kept us bottled up. We lost 3-0. We scrimmaged TJ and we beat them 5-1. But at the same time, even TJ has a few pieces that when I was coaching there for 12 years, I seldom had those kinds of pieces. The problem is I think the culture right now at TJ it's a bit, hit or miss, and they're not all on the same page. If they were, they would be much more dangerous. So, I mean, to me, the National District gets slept on way too much. And there's a lot of stuff going on because those teams can possess the ball, but they also can break you on the counter attack and just crush you. And that's like something to me, like when I play national teams, we always have to have people dealing with the counter. We have to change how we play. We can't go forward like you used to. So it's a very talented and I think underappreciated conference, and they do a really good job. And the coaches, and I think John touched on it. Yeah, they want to beat each other, but they like each other and it's fun. And like that to me is like, once again, it's like, these relationships. And that's why soccer is the premier sport in the world to me, because you develop such strong relationships with those you're playing with and those you're coaching for and with and this and that and against. It's just a great setup. So I'm kind of excited to see how the next week plays out for them.
Well, and just so people will know, just to explain the structures of the 2 regions, there's a northern region that's made up of the Liberty and the Concorde. Coach Jimmy's Washington, Liberty, and Yorktown are in the Liberty. And then there's the Occoquan region, which is made of the Patriot District and the National District. Now, we just talked about the National District, and then those teams, every team qualifies for regionals. So, you'll have a 16-team tournament. But this year, they changed it, at least for basketball, and they did a double bye in the regionals, which means if you lose in the first round of the districts, you go right to the regionals, and you're going to play a top seed or a second seed. So I believe they're no, you're going to actually play a 4th or 5th, and then with a chance.
No, so in our shenanigans, and again, none of us get to vote on this. We just get to listen and hear about it. So the athletic directors or DSAs have decided that the lowest 2 seeded teams after quarterfinals have to play each other.
Oh.
In a play-in regional game, which is on Wednesday the 17th. It's interesting that the Patriots started their tournament on Thursday, so those 2 teams are already known.
Gotcha.
We still are unknown because that comes after after Monday's game. But again, I don't know who's in a more advantageous situation. You both haven't won that first game, which sucks. You have guys that are in negative feelings. Do you want to go do you want to be the national team that loses and goes in on Wednesday? Or do you want to have like a weekend to think about shit? We lost. Now we have to go in and play this regional game.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But next year is going to be even different. So
I know. I want us to go back to the old schedule.
We're going back. We're going and we're aligning with
that. Good.
We're aligning
as
with
stressful as that is, I like that better. I want to see different teams. Like, I mean, in fact, I had to play West Po on Tuesday, then Thursday.
Yep.
Like, what are we doing here? Like let's just try to get away from things.
The way they do it now, not just within region, the DSAs are voting on, but within the whole state, the HSL, you have to play teams over and over and over again.
Why can't we go back to
play anyone new to the state title? What's that?
Why can't we go back to 3As? Why do we have to have 6?
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
Julian, I saw your basketball thing, the 5 versus 6. I would love to have, again, when we lost versus First Colonial 2 years ago, I would love Washington Liberty or excuse me. Yes, Washington Liberty to go play First Colonial
Yeah.
in that year because they had a great squad, but yet they beat us 5-0 in the freaking state final. But
Yeah.
these guys are there in the semifinals of a state championship. They should have the opportunity to play them. We don't need 6 championships. We only need
Yeah, so because Jimmy and Coach Sean, in case you didn't see it, I had proposed instead of having six state champions, because like everyone has to have a trophy, so we can have as many district and regional champions as they want. At the state level, 5 and 6 is compressed into one champ. The 3 and the 4 classifications are like the old AA. It's the second, and then the 1 and the 2 are the first. So we have 3 state champions. We don't need 6 state champions. You know, I tried to do like a graphic one time of all the state champions over the last like 10, 12 years. There were so many state champions, I didn't have time to do it all. I'm just like,
Yeah.
the whole thing is ridiculous.
But it's crazy how, like, you think about this, but this is all, I feel like VHSL should change the name, because this is all, well, most of our team sports, I would say, you know, obviously, you know, basketball and soccer and, you know, lacrosse, all these changes, rules and all that stuff with these tournaments. And 6A, we went from, like you said, like we went from 3 AA, AAA, AA, and single A. I mean, that was tough back then to really go through a region and go through a state. I mean, that was tough. Now I feel like it still is tough because the teams have gotten better, but it's not as bad as it used to be. But it's all football.
It's all football.
It's all football. They're like, well, why can't we win a state championship? Like, why can't we get one? You know, we keep losing to all these other teams and we're still really good. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Let's just split it up into 6. But
we should just send all those DSA's principals, send them all trophies, tell them they won the state championship, and then we'll sell it on the field. Just say, guys, you won your state, you're great. Go tell your boys that you won. But anyway, they're probably tired. I probably will get banned from going to basketball next year. But Coach Sean, let's do the Patriot next. That's the other district within the Occoquan region. Now, I saw a lot of those teams. I think Yorktown played at least 4 or 5 of them. It's very balanced, because you were talking about South County earlier today. They were down early in the year. I know Alexandria City's been up and down all year.
Yeah.
You guys were down, now you're up. So talk about the parity and Patriot.
Yeah, no, it's extremely well balanced. To me, like, you know, like Wespo, you know, struggled on paper and then all of a sudden got hot, and they were a handful for us. So to me, South County, like, they move the ball well, they move it around, they have great attacking pieces, they're solid in the back. And then AC, you know, they're always going to be problematic. I mean, they're like a national team to me. They remind me of, like, you know, the W&Ls and the Lewises. Like, they have kids that can just fly around. I think sometimes Peter probably has a hard time figuring out which kids are going to be on today, because he's got so much talent to put out there and whatnot. So they're always going to be tricky. And then Robinson, right? Like, since the beginning of time, Robinson has been good, and they're good again. They move the ball around. They play a little more direct, I think, than I remember in years past, but they can still knock the ball around. They got great size. So to me, our group is wide open. I wouldn't be surprised if West Potomac, like they did in basketball, make a little run like they did last year in soccer as well, and surprise some people. Because these playing games, you win the playing game, you win the next game, you move, then you get some momentum going. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how this whole, at least my section of the region, plays out. So I don't think there's a clear favorite at all. Because I think
I will say West Potomac and Robinson both beat Yorktown at Yorktown, and they both were great games. So I was impressed by both teams. Coach Jimmy, did you see any of the Patriot teams this year?
I'm trying to think. We saw Alexandria.
You beat Robinson.
We beat it was Lake Braddock. No, it was Robinson. Sorry.
You beat Robinson.
We beat Robinson. We beat Alexandria City. I'm trying to think who else was in that district, because we had
West Springfield. You probably didn't see them, right?
No, we didn't have West Springfield, but yeah, we had Robinson. We had Alexandria City. No, we had Edison, Mount Vernon. We had those are from national. Yeah. But we beat Robinson.
Jimmy, what's your seeding? Where'd you end up?
We finished 3rd.
Yeah, see, like, that's amazing. So the third team in your group beat
knocked off the unknockable.
Yeah, knocked off our 2 and 3. So I mean, once again, like, the Nationals bringing it, man.
Yeah. No. But I'm talking about freaking the McLean win. That's like
Yeah.
They look tough on paper. Watching them on film, obviously, Julian, you've been in there for a couple games. You know, looking forward to a matchup hopefully down the road, but excited that I don't have to see it if we don't qualify.
You know what's crazy is like you do hear of teams that I think in the past, we've had, you see teams and teams that are okay, this team is going to be tough to beat. And I knew that in a sense, when you're around, for a while, kind of okay, this team looks really good. Like this team can really go far, this team will do well. And so last year I knew we were going to be tough to beat. I said, you know what, this might be another one. This team is going to be tough to beat. But this year there really hasn't. I mean, yeah, some teams have had some good seasons, but just looking at everything, there's so much parity. And there's a lot of parity even across all the districts, because like, oh, well, so-and-so beat that team. Well, yeah, but they beat this other team. Well, but that team beat the other team and they beat that, so everybody's beating each other, like we lost to Langley, we lost to Herndon, but
And
we
then
beat McLean.
Herndon's doing
Herndon
this,
beat
they're
McLean.
losing.
We beat
They're
McLean.
losing. They're tying Edison. Like
Yeah,
what?
yeah, exactly.
Wait.
You know what I mean?
Herndon
So
tied Edison?
Herndon tied Edison.
Yorktown tied Herndon as well.
Yeah.
So it is. It's one of those things. Yeah, and that's the thing. But that's what I'm saying. Like,
It's
they
wild.
smoked you last time. Like, you don't know what's going to happen the next time. Because like I said, just the parity and just some of these guys that will show up for one game and unfortunately don't show up for the other one.
The only consistent thing about high school students, the inconsistency about it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, Coach Jimmy, let's talk a little bit more in depth about Liberty. Now, McLean was basically seen as the front runner most of the season. They have a great attack with Gage Lyons, Cap Eaton, and I'm blanking on the other guy, the sophomore, Joe Arguita, and they got some size behind. They got a very experienced team. Well, Herndon has got two quality center backs. They got a great coach. Coach has got a lot of experience coaching at a very high level. I believe it's his first year doing high school. And
Yeah,
you put Herndon on top with your. I'm not going to say upset because you were there. You know what you did, but that win, that direct kick by Tony, that really knocked the division on its head. So talk a little bit about your thoughts about that game and also about the district.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought the game was interesting, especially because I was at Wakefield watching the Wakefield Langley game. I was not there at McLean. I had gotten 2 yellow cards from an official at the Herndon game.
Oh.
So I had to watch that game through NHA.
Congratulate Wakefield. Congratulations, Wakefield. Way to be hosting.
Yeah. So but I had talked to the boys beforehand. I had, like Sean said, now you can watch NHS and you can catch some of these games and, kind of really get an idea of some of these schools that you haven't been able to kind of see, in person. And, we had talked about it, just playing our game. I think if we play our style of soccer and we're solid, I think, we can hang with anybody, not necessarily that we'll beat because we've had some issues scoring. I don't have like a top scorer. I don't have a kid that, is really dangerous, but I think it's more of a group effort. But I think if we do knock the ball around, we'll be fine. But I think with our conference, it was one of those things that, like I said, one team is, doing well one night, the next team's not doing well the other night. And so I think against McLean that night, I think we knocked it around well from what I saw and, just connecting some passes and just really kind of trying to keep them in front of us most of the night. Then you pick up a call here and there. I know the game got chippy and just watching it and then listening to some people that, I think they were frustrated because, they wanted to be that top seed. They wanted to win outright. And, when we came and I think they got desperate towards the end and, we're trying to just, knock the ball long and maybe do some things that they don't normally do and find guys. I think for my perspective, I think the guys did a good job and just really wanted to win that game more than anything.
I'd like to say that that's the blueprint. Like, again, he just pointed out what other coaches are looking at. Like, how did another coach perform against a top tier team? He set out that blueprint. So now McLean's got to go figure out how to prevent that from being replicated. It's going to be replicated.
Well, Jimmy's mentioned 2 yellow cards, and probably we should hold. We got to be careful.
No. But the yellow cards were well earned.
Yeah, that's right. So, but it's interesting because, as you guys know, Yorktown had come out in a 4-4-2 against McLean and put 6 guys behind their 3 attackers and really just did a great job of just stymieing their attack. And there was some questionable officiating. I don't want to pick on the officials, but it was Coach Carlos got tossed, and I thought he had every right to be upset. So
I hope he paid his fine.
What's that?
I hope he paid his fine.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah, I couldn't go that far, but I was definitely cheering for him. And his team rallied and had a huge win against McLean. They were down 1-0 without coach, and they were able to put together a huge win that put them back into contention for the playing Wakefield, because Washington League's had our number for the last 2 years. So by winning that game, they're playing against Wakefield, and Wakefield beat Yorktown this year. But they got to feel confident going to Wakefield that if they play their game, that they have a good chance to beat Wakefield. So, anyone else want to talk about the Liberty District at all? Or
yeah, I mean, I do. We got destroyed by McLean, and I like that kid Gage, man. I was like, does he stop running? I mean, my God, he's got energy batteries like out the wazoo. He would not stop running all over us. It was incredible. Like, that's a good team. My worry for them is they've had so much success. How are they going to handle it when they're at halftime and they're down 1-0 on a bad call or a dumb foul or bad luck? Like, I used to argue with Bo all the time. Bo
could be the freaking big boy.
Yeah.
Because I used to argue with Bo. Bo would be like, have to win every game. I was like, no, you don't. That's not good. Like, suffer adversity. Like, see what your team's made of. Like, sit some kids down. Bo, what formation are you playing when you're down 1 with 10 to go? 3-5-2, 2-5-3. What are you doing? I don't know. I was like, figure that out now. Like, start planning. Like, this is the stuff that, like, McLean's had an awesome year. But I hope there's details being done behind the scene, or else they're going to find themselves into some trouble, because the parity is unreal, and managing, these kinds of games is different than any other games you'll manage.
You don't hope that he's playing in that. Come on. Stop giving him ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think Liberty's got tons of quality. And I also think, Yorktown last year, Washington Liberty last year, incredible teams. And we lost to McLean, and we beat them 4-0 2 weeks earlier. And Coach Jimmy lost to Langley. Coach Bo did make some late season acquisitions last year.
Yes, he did.
They had kids I hadn't seen in a while, and all of a sudden they show up. But anyway, maybe a loss or 2 earlier could help both teams. Yeah.
Hey, so I do have to say, I love our 2 regions. Everybody needs to be aware. Osborne's legit. Cooper's legit.
Yes.
And we played, Jimmy, you played in the Marymount tournament. Well, you had your guys enroll in it in the past. We had our guys continue to roll in it. The Marymount preseason, kind of 8v8 tournament that they do.
Yeah.
But again, it's been an Osborne, WNL, Wakefield, Hayfield, kind of fun Lewis thing. And but watching them progress, seeing how they're doing down in, I guess, what is that, the 6D, 6C region?
They're 6B. They're 6B.
I guess we're C, you're D, we're C. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's like the Woodbridge to Richmond region. But those guys are going to be a weapon. He's like 6'4". The guy has pinpoint accuracy, a stud.
Yeah. Well,
you can shut him down. You just got to put 2 6s on him.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the state. We won't meet them until the state final. Where we met it.
We'll hit them in the States.
Yeah, and that's the final.
But regional play.
Yeah, I don't think we'll play them until
nope.
Final. But let's talk about the Concorde. Now, I think the Concorde is at least as strong as the Liberty this year, maybe even stronger. And Coach Sean pointed out, Madison's really good. I watched the Madison-Wakefield game, Madison-Westfield game online the other day. Both teams are quality. Madison has some size. They're very creative. I love the way they pass the ball. Centerville's, Westfield's just got great attack, great athletes in the attack. So I think those 2 teams are very tough. Centerville has Carlos Calderon, who's one of Coach Bo's midfielders from last year, transfer. Great midfielder at Centerville. Centerville's got, I think, a goalie is signed with a Division I school. So Centerville's also tough. So I think whoever so in the
Doesn't South Lakes have like 7 ties?
South Lake says 8 ties.
8 ties.
Madison has
Like, what a
8 ties.
ridiculous year. Marty's got to be pooping his pants.
Exactly.
They're trying to take my TJ record for ties away from me. They can't do that.
For one season, yeah.
Anyone else have anything to say about the Concorde?
Actually, I'll say one thing. So Centerville, they had a player pass away in January
Yep.
of nothing official here, but it appears to be one of those situations that's happening more frequently with fentanyl and other things.
Yeah.
I have no proof of this, but it certainly
It
seems
sucks. It's just
trending. So Centerville is playing with an emotional wild card, and I think those boys and I coached the young man who passed, and I think those boys have sort of galvanized behind the scenes. So they're like a sleeper to me, because normally in the last 10 years, no one's worried about Centerville boys, right? Just they haven't been that great in a long time. But they're like, they beat us 2-0, and the kid from Langley scored a beautiful upper 90 goal. The energy was good, and they're just slowly working through things, and they've had a good year. So I'd keep an eye out for Centerville. And yeah, South Lakes has a lot of ties, but Marty always seems to find a way to put that team a little further down the road, and they're going to be dangerous,
Dairy Queen gift cards.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's because Jimmy knows so the 1 through 4 in the Concorde will play the 1 through 4. One
In Liberty.
In the Liberty, and those matchups are going to be epic. They're going to be all 4 are going to be very tough. Let's talk about penalties. Let's talk about penalties. So, South Lakes has 8 ties. All those ties this year. It's been crazy. What do you guys do about penalties? How do you guys think a lot about it? In a high school game, you have 5 penalty takers, and they keep taking them. I don't know if that's changed, but that's the way it was. So what do you guys do to prepare for penalties? Because it's gonna have a big effect over who advances in postseason.
I guess I'll jump in, but yeah, I mean, we're already practicing them, and I think the biggest issue for me is not going with my best players, because I've gotten burned early in my career where I'm gonna trust my big name players. Meanwhile, in practice, Johnny, you can't play a lick in a real game, is money from the spot. So for me, I have to remind myself, like, let's look at everybody, because I've had some teams in the past where I put out 5 of the ugliest kids in terms of soccer ability, but they can do their pens and they can do them under pressure. So for me, like, this is the hard part of like choosing the right person with the right temperament. And then, as we all know as coaches, if someone's having a terrible game, do you change your mind? And if you don't change like, these are like the little things that you look at your assistant, your sister's like, you're the head coach, you make that call. And then you got to go talk to your kids. You're like, you're the 5 kickers. And the one kid's like staring at you like, I hate you. I wish I never played for you. But you might think it's the right call. So to me, it's like, it's one of the most underappreciated, not talked about, great question to ask. Like, how do you manage your players? How do you come up with your list? Do you change your list? If you go through the first 5, do you repeat? I've done that before. I let a kid kick a second time, and thank God they made it. But like, that's a huge risk. So that's my 2 cents on it. It's complicated, and we're doing them every day now. And hopefully I'll choose the right 5 if that time comes.
Yeah, but you don't go by volunteers, coach. So you don't pick the 5 that want to take them. No volunteers.
Oh, no, I appreciate
it.
That's a variable that I pay attention to. They're willing to put their, on the line. That's part, like, that's like 5%. Okay, good. You're eager. Great. But no, not just, this is not participation time.
Nope. This is business.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, I look at it like, this is, can I coach or not? If I screw up,
can I coach or not?
I'm an idiot, and I'll be mad at myself for the next 9 months. So for me, it's like, you can't worry about the kids' feelings. You gotta get it right. And if I don't get it right, it's my fault. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Coach John, jump in here.
I was gonna say, for me, it's it's a little bit of both. Like, because I've kind of, like, Sean, what you said, like, you make a decision, and then unfortunately that kid who's your stud just doesn't have that temperament where he can't either calm himself down or really relax, or he's just so nervous about missing and making the mistake that, I mean, he doesn't just take a bad shot. I mean, he misses the whole frame. I mean, you're just like, oh God. So I think for me, and because it happened once before, the last time was, when was it? It might have been, I'm trying to think who it was against. And then I can't remember who the opponent was, but in any case, I had a young man who was a starter, had him picked to take the fourth kick, and he was like, okay. And so when they're on the field, it comes his turn, and another kid steps up, and I'm like, wait, that's what just happened? And so he literally made that decision. I'm like, no, you go. And so another kid who wasn't even on the list went. And so the kid was, pushed into that position in a sense because he was an underclassman. And I think the poor kid, missed because, he was probably, beside himself having to be put in that situation. And the keeper made a decent save, but it wasn't a great shot. And so we missed that penalty. They scored the next one, and the game was over. And so for me, and I saw John was like, no volunteers. Actually, I say, hey, who wants to take one? And then, 2 or 3 guys are like, yeah, coach, I got you. And so you see the confidence, and you see like, yeah, I'm good. I'm ready for this, to be put in this position. And so I'll go with those 3 guys. And then if nobody else volunteers, then, you just kind of look around and say, all right, well, he strikes the ball well. He's not going to poop his pants, and, maybe I have him shoot, and he's not going to. So, I think for me, it's kind of like that, I guess, hybrid, a little bit of both. Like I'll say, all right, who wants to take one? Some guys will say, like I said, 3 or 4 guys will raise their hand. And, and I think that, okay, yeah, you're good. All right. You guys figure out who's going to go first, who's going to go third, that sort of thing. And then I'll put 1 or 2 other guys that I think like, all right, like you go last. Like, we're going to put this on your shoulders because I know you can come through and you'll be fine, and so that's how we've done it. So it's worked and it hasn't worked. So like at this point, I'm like, it's 50-50. Either it'll work or it won't, but shoot, like I have nothing to lose at this point by picking some volunteers and some kids that are really confident about it. So why not?
So I got to play on that. So I got to defer to my younger statesmen, elder statesmen, longer guys in the game, but I'm the asshole. So we did not have a lot of success for my first. I mean, I've been doing this 13 years. These guys have multitude, maybe times X, right? So it doesn't matter. But for 8 years, started in the Patriot District as a Lee Lancer, right? We would get pummeled by Springfield, Lake Braddock, all these guys over and over. We had Macaulay beating us in frickin' when the guy from AU, who's a center back, was playing straight. Michael Cherry, just making bangers, just killing everybody. But broke the teeth, right? And learned how to make a program. The fun part about this is, again, 2017, we were able to crack the nut of the school where we had quality players that were playing for clubs actually think that the program had value. And then we made our first regional appearance, right? We were playing in, as we talked about earlier, the 5A district, 5A region. We had to go down to Albemarle, which was a 4-hour bus ride. But guess what? Guys got on a freaking charter bus for the first time in their lives. We went down there, got boat race 6-0. I had a guy that was a VCU recruit, VMI recruit, and a JMA recruit on that team. The first time we had D1 recruits. Again, this was, 8 years into play. We move on, go into 2019. These guys have all been playing together. They valued the energy, the experience. And we made a regional run. We lost to a Briar Woods team that was scoring 7. This was Francis's team that was scoring and winning state championships back to back. We turn around, get promoted up, we go through COVID year. I lose my captain with a broken femur. The team gets closer. We go in, you guys know this story. We get down, freaking make a chance to do something different for a Springfield school. Beat a team down in Roanoke. My All-American guy gets freaking knocked out with a concussion. We have to go play a Virginia Beach team on grass that they cut long like Lambeau, knowing that we're coming down from turf. Hey, it's a COVID year. We go lose 5-0. I don't have anything. It is what it is. The team rebounds. We go into last year. We play hard. We have a guy that did not play in that freshman year. Legitly does something, right? So we play a game and we come out in a quarterfinal against a quality team like Langley, who wins the state championship. I love this program. These kids believe in their stuff. And so we come into this year, we play our games. We come out of spring break without a loss. We go play Annandale. Annandale's a great team because they work hard. They play hard. This is why National District, you see them in the regional, Sean, watch out. They've got players that just play hard. They took us to double overtime. We lose. We've lost 4 games this year by 1 goal each. I think we have a great squad. I think we're ready to compete against you, Jimmy. I'm coming. Sean, we're coming.
Well, guys,
And I think the best part is that all of us believe that we have the ability to go out there, and it's what are our kids going to do? They've got all this distraction, prom, testing, graduation, all of this. Who cares? Who's focused?
exactly.
I'm going to say WNL has a freaking experienced squad. Woodson, experienced squad. All of us have been to semifinal regional play for the last 3 years. And guess what? This year's not going to be different. You got the greatest coaches on here, Julian.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to play hard. But there's a little bit of luck involved. You got to be fortunate to win a soccer game and knock out, because things happen that are a little bit out of your control. And as coaches, we want to control everything. When you're talking to your kids before a knockout game, is your speech any different? Because sometimes, during the regular season, you're trying to inspire, you're trying to motivate. Sometimes kids have club games, or you're trying to get them to play. Knockout games, the kids can be nervous. There's a crowd there, and the games mean a lot. Does your talk with the kids change when some of the kids, this is their last game?
I don't think so. I'm going to speak different than them too. It's 1 game at a time. How do we do today?
Right.
Don't view it any different. You've done it for 15 games for us, 19 games for Pete at TC, because they can play 85 different games. But everybody else, again, my personal opinion, we've worked this hard to get this way, right? We've learned positive, negative. How the heck are we going to go out there and perform? Guys, it's on you. We've practiced for it. Go do it. I shut up.
Yeah. I think for me, it does change because, the outcome is everything. The outcome, either that's your last high school game, that's the last time you will step out and be a part of a high school program, or now you've secured at least, a regional berth, coming out of this game. Yes, there's another one. We want to win the district, but okay, you can breathe a little bit better knowing this isn't your last game. So I think the one thing that sometimes I kind of press to them is the focus. Like this game, we have to be focused. Everybody has to be focused, because it's, that 2 minutes where we're, not focused, or the play where we're taking off, or something's happening, because you're thinking about, we played today and prom is on Friday, am I thinking about this or that? If you get caught up with that, that may kind of take you away from what your job is tonight. And we need everyone here tonight. And that's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest difference, that not so much, because I tell the kids, listen, this is not do or die. I'm not going to tell you this is do or die. And no, it's not. But this is a big part of your adolescent life, that some of you are going to come back next year in 2 years. Some of you, this is your last ride. This is something that it's supposed to be memorable. I'm not going to make it do or die, where it's not. And that's never how I run the program. But it is like, okay, what's at stake. You know what we need to do. So, come out what we've done the past few weeks, and let's just, keep it rolling. But that sense of urgency and focus is definitely more of the message that I'm sending to them.
And Coach Jimmy, so speaking of do or die, last year, Yorktown plays Washington and Liberty for the district final, and Washington Liberty has prom. We really don't care about Washington Liberty's prom. We want to win the district title. So Coach Jimmy's got a very deep team. He's got 16, 17, 18 players. Yorktown was not deep. We had 8 or 9 great players. We weren't as deep as you guys. So Coach Jimmy moves that game to 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 100 degrees. It is the hottest day of the year. And Washington, they're deep. They can bring players in and out. And Yorktown is not deep. You guys just wore us out that game. It was a very good game, but you guys wore us out that game.
Yeah, but trust me, you say because Jimmy, it was definitely not my decision. You know what I mean? Because listen, like my guys get worn out. I mean, yes, we can run a few more guys than some other teams or maybe than Yorktown did last year. But no, I mean we don't. I don't like playing that early. It's never fun. I mean, we practice in that, we go hard in that weather, especially like what was like that was like it was like that on Friday, Thursday and Friday. And so but our game tomorrow against Langley's at 5:30, because our girls are the second seed. And so the coach was like, well, I just want to, play later, and, I'm pretty sure we can get by, I think it's they host Wakefield. And he said, I'm pretty sure we'll get by them. But Wednesday, I'll take the later, the earlier spot, and I'm like, all right, but great. It doesn't do me any favors if we're out Monday. You know what I mean? Like, so I definitely prefer to play later on in the day. It's just one of those things that throughout the year. Yeah.
Rick, Jimmy.
Yeah.
What's that?
You should have pulled Rick.
No, they do. They do ask me for my feedback. They do say, "Hey, coach, what time would you rather go?" And I said, "I'd like to go as late as possible." He said, "Well, the latest we can go with everything going on and this and that is 4:30, which is why." And again, I don't know why we keep having prom about the same week. Our prom is this Friday. And so the Liberty Conference final tournament was supposed to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Well, they all agreed because they had this talk before that if WNL is in the final, then we will play Thursday, not Friday. So you would think it's doing us a favor, but it's not, because we play in the semifinal Wednesday, and then we'd have to turn right back around and play Friday, Thursday for a championship. And so I'm like, no, like, why can't we move prom to Thursday?
Like, our problem is like June 5th. Our problem is like 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm trying to tell the principal, like, hey, we gotta move prom back into June. But then again, then I'm gonna complain and say, hey, you know what, we're playing in June. Can you move it up?
Hey,
but
but
let's get back to Coach Sean.
but you're winning
Sean,
championships, Jimmy.
Yeah. So Sean, what about your inspirational speech? You've been doing this a long time, and you understand how these kids are, as Coach Jimmy was talking about, they have prom, they have graduation. These are 4 or 5 weeks. These kids will never.
Oh yeah, no, I'm more on the old man Jimmy side than I am young buck John. So I think it's a different talk, and the Jimmy's words were excellent. Focus, all on the same page. No more sensitivity to someone's comments. Like, we're doing this together. And I share a story. My last college game, we were playing Ohio Wesleyan, and they're #1 team in the country. We went 4 overtimes, 141 minutes, because they used to do 15-minute overtimes in college back then. I played the entire time, like marked 4 different guys. And I remember getting out of the locker room. I was the first one out of the locker room, and my coach is there. And I'm like, Coach, let's knock the ball around. So we're knocking the ball around the field. We're the only 2 people there. You can smell the beer, the cigarettes. People are booing us, yelling at us. It's a Friday night. Saturday night. It was awesome. So I share that story with the boys. I'm like, listen, you're nervous. That's good. You give a shit. Pardon my language for the podcast. But let's also enjoy ourselves. Like, we're gonna have fun with this. Look around. Experience the atmosphere, remember it, soak it in. But I'm like, Jimmy, you don't turn off. You turn off for a second, you're sitting next to me, and you're not going back in. I'm not playing around. And I even told him, if I got to put a JV kid, I just pulled in, because they'll do the job. They're going in, and you're going to sit there and like it. Like, there's no more messing around. And I always share my story with them too. That, like, after every last high school game, college game, I was in tears. And they will too, even if they don't believe me. So I'm like, we can't turn off. So my speech is a little bit more like attention to detail, keep fighting, never give up, never stop playing until the whistle's 3rd, 4th time. Put that ball through the net into the next town. Make sure it's a goal. We don't turn anything off, all that stuff. So for me, it's a matter of like lowering the intensity a little bit, but reminding them that this is not a normal game. This is much different. And the end of a career feels a lot different than the end of state cup, in November, when you're playing for your club. So yeah, I'm more on the gray beard side of things.
Well, that's great. That's great stuff, Coach. Well, Coach Jimmy, another thing a coach has to do is, you guys can overthink things. Like, for example, you've coached against Coach Bo numerous times. The players, his style. It's sometimes in a game like that, you could overthink things and try to get the tactics right, but it doesn't necessarily complement your personnel. As a coach, do you have to check yourself to make sure you're not trying to do too much as a coach, and you're playing your game?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of times you do, and I think the only problem with with being able to access all these games on NHS and Arlington, we have all our games on YouTube or Huddle. Is at least for me, my wife sometimes, I mean, even now, she's like, I don't get it. Like you were at this game, it just happened, and you're watching it again. Like nothing's gonna change. You know that, right? Like nothing's gonna change that already happened.
No,
I was
it's
like, no, no,
perspective.
I said, I get that. Nothing is going to change. Even the third time I watch it, nothing's going to change. But like you said, right, my perspective, like, okay, could I have done something differently? Should I have done something differently? Like, what do I do in this situation the next time this comes up? So I think, you do try not to overthink things, because I think sometimes, yeah, you start to mess with it too much. And, it's like you're making more of a problem than you are, solving or coming up with a solution. And so, my assistant coach has been with me for now almost 10 years. His name is Chris. And when I brought him on, he was going to be my fitness guy. He was going to do a lot of that stuff, warm ups, everything else with them, so that I can kind of really start getting ready, then do all the technical and then technical and all that other stuff. But he's come a long way. He's done his licenses and he's done everything. So now he does become a sounding board, and we talk about things and we think about things. But for the most part, we talk about what we want to do beforehand. At practice, we really go over detailed practice. Sometimes they get bored, because we're not, scrimmaging, and we're not doing this, we're not shooting on goal. We're going over tactical stuff. We're going over simple things. But it's like I've always said, I can't ask a kid to do something that he hasn't practiced. And I can't sit and yell at a kid and say, hey, like, you didn't do this if we didn't go over it. If I didn't mention it to him, or I didn't, because unfortunately, a lot of our kids aren't watching a lot of soccer. They're playing, but they're not watching it. They're not watching some of these higher levels. They're not, they'll see a highlight, they'll be quick to hit a highlight. They'll watch this, they'll watch that, they'll watch, quick, video of somebody's game and how they had a brace but they're not watching the whole game. They're not watching the runs. They're not watching all these things. So these are things that I have to go over with these guys. So going back to your original, I try not to, and I try not to also worry about what the other team might do, because that's not in my control. What's in my control is how we play, what guys I have on the field, what the message is, and kind of what our goals are for that game. And I try to focus on that, and not so much about, stopping this kid or stopping that kid, or, getting away from this kid because he's really good, or, things like that. I mean, those are kind of built into the way we play. But I think, when I start worrying about another team, then I'm not doing enough to kind of prepare mine. And so I want to make sure mine is prepared to deal with whatever it is that, they're going to throw at us.
Yeah, nice, Coach. Coach John, Coach Sean, you got something to add about the tactics? And like, for example, Coach Jimmy knows Coach Carlos. These guys, we know them all so well, and it becomes a battle between coaches. Do you guys get involved in that as well?
I defer to the wizard down there.
No, I think tactics matter a lot. Like this time of year, like I've already started playing with 5 in the back this year, just to be ready for when I need it. Now, this being said, we'll never have a lead. It won't matter. I've just, but like for me, like I think like Jimmy brings up an excellent point. I like watching film, and my wife says the same thing. Like, what's going to change? And I sometimes just, shoot back. I'm like, I'll be divorced. And then she just looks at me. I'm like, maybe that's already in motion anyway. So I might as well watch the soccer game, right? So at the end of the day, like I like watching video because it gives me the data bank. I can be like, okay, now I know this kid makes mistakes. My kid makes mistakes in these situations continuously. It's not my emotions that are getting me pissed at this kid. I've seen it several times. And because of our ridiculous scheduling, we're playing the same team 3 or 4 times.
3 or 4 times.
And so you know what they're going to do. Or if you're playing Langley, you just tell your kids, listen to Bo. They're going to do what Bo says. And they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I was like, oh my God, are you that dumb? Like at the end of the day, it's like, So to me, it's like, yeah, tactics at this point, like, how are you going to protect the lead? Do you go 5 in the back, or do you continue to press? Do you sit in? When you're going to chase, is your center back now you're 9? Maybe that's the person you want to start playing balls to and flicking it off. What set pieces are you going to save for the end? So I think, yeah, I mean, I've lost more games than my kids have lost by over like tinkering. And that is one of the dangers. Like I almost cost us the game on Thursday by over tinkering. But when you see your kids starting to fall apart because you have all those data points, like, oh my God, this kid's slipping. Sometimes you look at your bench and you think you have a solution and it's actually a problem and it doesn't work. But, we all do this at night, right? You go upstairs, open up the fridge, close it. 5 minutes later, there's got to be something in there. You look at your bench, you keep looking at your bench, and then you're like, try something and it blows up in your face. But I don't know. This is what the human aspect of it is that I love. Coaches are just infallible, just like players are. And I think this coaching crew we have on this podcast, I'm sure we've all admitted to kids like that was my bad. We shouldn't have changed. I shouldn't have put you in there. Jimmy's point about the practice thing. I don't know how many times I've been like, I know we didn't go over this. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And I made an assumption that you knew how because you're playing for this club and this coach.
Right.
Those situations maybe haven't come up in club as much. And maybe I'm more of a pain in the ass than your club coach because I'm as emotional as the players are in club.
Yorktown lost
different.
this year, 100% admitted to the player. I put you in the wrong position. I apologize.
Well, it's interesting. I think it was Coach Jimmy or Coach Sean mentioned using a JV player. And last year, Coach Carlos against McLean, Nate in the regional semifinals, Nate Woods, one of our leading scorers, top players, was out, and he threw a JV kid in there late in the game. The kid hadn't played 1 minute on varsity in the regional semifinals. He put him in there. Kid made the pass that could have tied the game. He put him in there, and the kid didn't even make the team this year as a senior. Coach Carlos knew the kid, his limitations, but he knew this kid could deliver something that we needed, and he almost did. And it was one of those things where when he put this kid in, I know the kid really was a good kid, pretty good player, but he knew that this is what we needed at the particular time, and he was almost right. He almost guessed right. It just didn't work. Coach John, you guys do that as well. Do you use kids maybe you haven't used all year, and here is you put him in a big situation and see what happens.
Well, so this is the thing that's actually kind of, I'm glad you brought that up. So I don't know about you, Jimmy, Sean. I get this thing, every time we come into the regional play, what's your roster? 25 kids, South Lakes has 35 kids on their damn roster.
So does Langland.
Jimmy, I don't know how many you carry, but like, I only have 25 uniforms. So I usually, because of the name change, we were able to get 29 uniforms. Thank you. But again, so I don't know what the appropriate answer is here, Julian. So every year I only try to carry 24 kids, which is still a lot. I would love to be able to carry 20, but high school club schedule combining, everybody gets injured. We need to have more, right? So everybody's carrying heavy. You got to carry heavy, but we come into this regional tournament, you get handed this thing that says you only have 25 kids. So you have to make a choice. And so we all have to make decisions. And ultimately I still dress the kids that have been with the program and they come along for the ride and we'll deal with it when we get there. That was not your question. I got distracted.
No, I was just saying, basically I was trying to get at your personnel moves. Will they change in the postseason? Will you try something new? Will you try a kid who may fit a situation who you might not have used that much during the year, but this could be the situation where he fits.
100%. So we just went through the conversations about the PK shootout. So, we finished our last game on Wednesday. We've been doing obviously precept for district tournament. I'm blessed to have legitly gone through some pretty intense PK shootouts in the last 2 years. We went against the team down there in Roanoke for a state semifinal in a PK shootout. I have 4 of the same players that participated still on my squad right now.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Last year, we went into regional semis against Robinson. We went 7 rounds with the same 4 kids. And so we've got a pretty good consistent amount that's still available for us today. The interesting thing too is I don't agree with the way that it's set up. if you select 5 kickers, you need to have another 5 kickers. The fact that you can use the same 5 kickers is very interesting.
It is weird. It's weird.
I don't know where that came from or why that should be, and let alone they're not allowed, like they don't have to be on the field. So I could, to your point, go to the guy that is legitimately a PK specialist, doesn't play all year, but is just on the roster. He could be the team manager for all you know, but he can put the ball in one particular location over and over again.
Yeah.
A coach has that as a weapon. I don't know.
And they they amended that. I don't know if Sean, you might know this because you've been around a while, but the VHSL specifically also, or NFHS also changed that rule that the first 5, obviously the second 5, it could be obviously any player, but it has to be a different, like it could be the same 5 as the first, but it has to be a different player. Many years ago, Edison had this kid named Michael Goncalves. And they were playing, I believe it was either the district or like a regional game. The kid after the first 5 took every PK after that.
Oh my goodness.
He took it was like another 4 PKs until they won and the keeper made a save. The kid didn't miss a PK, but still, it was the first 5. And then after that, it was Michael Goncalves up to take PK, made it. And then the other team, I don't remember who it was. And the other team stepped up, took a PK. He came back up, took another PK. Other team had another kid come up, take a PK. He came back up and took a PK. So he ended up taking 5 penalty kicks that game. And then after that, I think there were a lot of complaints about, wait, how do you have the same kid, kicking this? Like, I mean, he would have been him, but there was no rule against it. And so then I think it was like a year or 2 after that is when that was, and the kid who, the coach that was there was Jimmy Wild.
Okay.
It was, he was the coach when that went down. But I mean, it was just an interesting fact that I was like,
Jimmy, he's got kind of long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Well, so guys, look, this has been great. You guys, learned a lot talking to you guys. I really appreciate your great work on the field, but also coming in and talking to me. Let's talk a little bit about what seniors. What's a message you can say to seniors, not only that you're coaching, but the ones that you've coached against for the last 2 or 3 years? Their careers are, like we talked about today, going to come to an end. Some of them might come to an end on top. They may win a state championship. But what are some of the? Do you have any kind words or maybe parting shots at some of the seniors that you've seen on the field the last few years?
Well, I mean, I'll jump in, but I mean, for me, I hope they can, appreciate what they've done. I mean, the soccer in this area is really good. And if they've been a part of any one of our programs for 4 years, they can clearly play. They can clearly put the team before themselves. So you hope that they walk out of there feeling pretty good about their contributions. And even though the loss may sting at the time, you were a part of something you loved so much that now that it's gone, you're in tears about it. Like, that's a great thing to have that valuable experience, that wonderful bonding experience. And I think on the male side, like just with guys, like guys don't bond unless they're playing sports. It's really hard to. So for me, it's like celebrate the brotherhood. You hopefully will have this group of friends that you played 4 years high school ball with. You'll be at each other's weddings. I'm still friends with all my high school mates. And I hope these kids can do that too. And for kids like Gage and others that destroyed my team, I just want to be like, miserable. I'm glad you're graduating, getting the hell out of here. But there's like one of those things where, like, you want to appreciate them, even the opposing players who destroy you. You want to be like, you're good. You did great. You drove me crazy as a coach. I hope you can appreciate how talented and how much you produce, and like sort of give them sort of like your perception of them. And hopefully they walk out of there feeling like, yeah, I did something in high school and I'm proud of it. That's kind of where I go with those things.
That's awesome, Sean. Your players are lucky to have you. Anyone else want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, what Sean is saying. You want to tell these boys that you appreciate kind of the work that they've put in the past few years. Not all of them get to play varsity for 4 years or 3 years. So those that do play at that varsity level for that many years, they're fortunate because it is. I mean, I think we have a lot of good high school soccer players in this area. I mean, some of them don't go on to play in college or Division III, something like that, but they're good, solid high school players. And I think along with that, they obviously the camaraderie and that brotherhood. But the other thing is that you hope that they're picking up things that will carry them through life. And as young men, that are learning, that are finding themselves, not just within the sport, but, going through high school. And you hope that, some of your words kind of stuck with them, whether that was on the field, whether that was, on the side after practice or before practice, little things like that, because I think we are coaches. I have a small sign in my office. It's like a pie chart, and the 98% is what people think I do, right? Just like coach soccer, and then the 2%, is what I actually do, right? And then the other 98% is just help build young men. So it's the pie chart of like people's perception of what we do, and we're just out there, we're just coaching soccer, but we also try to build young men. And I know for John as well as myself, we do have I don't know the makeup of your team, Sean, this year, but I know that for us, having a lot of Hispanic males and a lot of kids of color, you do become a role model, whether you want to or not, because you're in a position of leadership, you're in a position of trying to teach them things, not just about school, not just about soccer, but what's to come next, because they're all going to go through it. They're all going to, whether they go on to play college or whether they go on to play in men's leagues or whatever, there's a next phase. And the thing is that, did I prepare you enough for your next season in college? Or did I prepare you enough for your next year in the military? Or did I prepare you enough for your next, your first semester in college? So those are little things that, at least for me with these seniors, I always try to make sure, like, hey, you did a fantastic job here. You had a great time in high school. You're a fantastic player, All-American, or you didn't receive any accolades, but you were just as important as the one who didn't receive anything to the All-American. Because when we win, when we lose, everything that you wear says Generals. Doesn't have your last name on it. Doesn't have your first name. It says Generals, and that's who you are. You're a general. You are a number. You identify with that, and that's who you are carrying forward. And just kind of one of those things that I just hope that they do well. They cherish what they had. They cherish where they came from, and they just kind of, I guess you could say, pay it forward once they become young adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why Jimmy and John.
John, I'm running through a wall, man.
Yeah.
Jimmy and John do so much good for so many people in their community. It's way beyond the soccer. And I wish administrators, I wish the school board, superintendent would understand the role that coaches like these guys. It's so valuable
right here.
Like they don't get out of the school without this. Like, and this is really important stuff. So a lot of respect for what John and Jimmy do.
Hey, Julian, I'd love just 2 seconds right quick, because again, I cut my teeth getting my ass kicked by this man right below me in this screen.
Who is that?
Jimmy, Mr. Jimmy and Mr. Sean. Both of these guys have just given me my humble pie, and they've let me learn. And again, they've seen me at my worst when I came into the game at 24. And again, thought, again, we're seeing coaches right now that we're going up against, but boisterous guys that think they can overcome, results by, kind of like talking things through. Cultural means a lot. Our culture means everything in a program. I think everything that anytime you talk to any program, whether it's the guys you have here or Carlos or Bo, or anybody else, culture is everything. And the thing that's really cool is all of us are really hyper focused on that and what that means. And, as the generations churn, and as all of us have been at the same institutions for longevity, Sean, I know you've been at Woodson for a shorter time this go round, but again, you were winning girls championships while I was just recently graduating from Woodson as a guy. And so, like, you've seen both girls and guys championships. Jimmy, you've got multiple championships. I've just seen a final, got my butt whooped. Julian, you know everything about freaking winning. And it's like, having these conversations are great. And it's just, talking to the seniors is like, guys, you remember these things 22 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, those individual battles. I remember as a freshman watching Abe Thompson, Clarence Goodson losing a lightning battle in the regional semifinals versus Annandale. They win against Robinson because Abe Thompson is a national team player. And I got cut by a guy that had a British accent because I couldn't run up the hill. Sean, you know that hill. Frickin' I hate that guy. Anyway, so long story short, we all have our stories. We all love these kids. We're all going to frickin' make an impact here in this playoff. Watch our side of the region. Jimmy, we're coming for you.
Well, John, thanks for your passion, as always, and best luck in the postseason. Sean, always great. Thanks for always making yourself available. You always got a great take. And Jimmy, Coach, it was great meeting you. You know,
Likewise.
I always thought you were such a great coach. Didn't like you very much last year.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
You know, it happens, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things I've had, oh my gosh, I can't remember his first name. Kickbush.
He almost mercy
Tristan,
ruled me.
Tristan Kickbush?
No, his father.
Oh, yeah. I
His
forgot his
father.
name. Forgot his name.
So
Yeah.
in any case, years ago, when we played Yorktown and his son, the oldest one, no, not Lincoln, not Tristan.
I forgot. Yeah.
Anyway, he kind of went to Virginia Tech as a goalkeeper, and the dad he had a great game against us. And at that point, you know, nobody had huddle. We had a huddle, but it was one of those handheld ones. And so the dad said, I saw somebody recording the game. Do you have the game on tape? I said, yeah, absolutely. So he said, I know this is an odd question, but is there any way that I could get the footage of that game because he had such a great game and this and everything else? I said, you know, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, you know, sure, why not? You know, I'm not gonna, you know, it's a parent, I get it. And so he came to my office. He came to WNL, came to my office. We sat there. I'm not the most tech savvy. Long story short, we went over the video. He downloaded it. He was able to get it and everything else. And so then I ran into him at the Wakefield Yorktown game because I happened to go to that one, not because I was carded, but just because we had night off. Just want to clarify that. So I went to that game and he was there and he said, hey, Coach, how are you? I'm like, oh, good. How are you? And then I looked at him and I kind of, you know, he kind of realized I didn't know exactly who he was. He goes, oh, I'm, you know, Tristan's Kickbush and I forget his older brother name. I'm their father. Remember you helped me? I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. He goes, you know, I've told quite a few people that you're the nicest guy because I don't know how many people would do that. And, you know, especially the rivalry between Yorktown and WNL, and like we sat in your office and we talked and, you know, you were just really pleasant. You know, it's kind of, he was like, it's not far, but definitely you're not the person that you seem to be on the sideline. And I said, that's good. That's good. I said, because, you know, it is. I think it's one of those things that people think that you're one way because they see you coach. I'm a very intense coach. You know, I was the same way. I was very hard, you know, player. I mean, and I tell the guys, I'm gonna do everything I can to advocate and battle for you because you're doing the same thing, practices, game. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm expecting you to give, you know, if I'm expecting you to give me 100%, I'm going to give you my 100%. You know, and that's the only way I could show that is by battling and fighting these little fights for you. But he was so complimentary, like, oh man, you're so nice, and this and that. And I told other people about you. This. And I was like, oh great, so not everybody in Arlington hates me, right? And he's like, no.
Well, Coach, that's the exact same way I met Coach Bo. So Coach Bo, my son's junior year, so during the lockdown season, he was just being crazy on the side. I was like, who's this guy? He's funny. So we took some pictures of him. My wife's a real good photographer. And I sent them to the Langley Soccer, you know, Instagram account. And we started messaging with this guy. I figured it was like some high school kid. Well, it was Coach Bo. And that's how we met. And we've been friends ever since. And it's just so funny because we have this big rivalry between Langley and Yorktown as well. But, you know, Coach Bo and I, we talk all the time. We love talking soccer, even though, you know, I'm a Yorktown guy. So yeah, that's the fun of it because, you know, we do it because we love it. We're passionate about it. But, you know, after the game's over, we still love all the people and the people that share our passion. You know, we have a lot of respect for folks that share the same passion that we have.
Yeah, going back to what Sean said, I know that my brother was part of the national district for a while, and he said, you know, he was always very complimentary about those coaches and about John. I mean, I've known Sean for years. We don't always get to play against each other, but I've known the work that Sean's been doing for, you know, I mean, quite some time now. And so I think it's one of those things where, you know, those coaches that are in high school because they want to be there, are in high school because they like it. You know, you get, you know, some coaches that come in, you know, they're doing a year or two and then they're out. You know, they come in a year or two and then they're out. And I think it's glad to see that so many guys, in a sense, have stuck around, like Peter and Dan Dricky, and I'm trying to think who else. Obviously, Bo, and Carlos has now been some years at
The Garzas.
the Garzas. Exactly. The Garzas. I mean, they moved, but I think they're still in it, and it's nice to kind of catch up with these guys and just sometimes just shoot the shit. And we've always talked about having a beer, but we never
can get there.
No. But it is. I mean, and I think I know a lot of these guys off the field and just with other things, and it is a lot of good people doing some good things at their schools and for these boys.
Yeah.
Well, we all would have beat each other on that night.
Oh, yeah, we want to win. We definitely want to win now. Hey, Coach, there's another Kickbush, a freshman now, is playing on the varsity team. So, you're not done with Kickbushes yet. So
no, I think he's the last one.
Yeah, he's only a freshman. He's only a freshman though, so that's for 4 more years. So anyway, guys, again, this has been great. Sorry I kept you so long. I know it's a Sunday night, but it's always great talking soccer. Let's do it more often. Maybe we can all get together and have a beer after the season.
That'd be great. Thanks for
Jimmy.
coming the
Same
game.
thing. Probably won't happen, but I'd love to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Again, I appreciate you guys.
All right, good,
thank you so
Jimmy,
much
John,
for
good
the
luck.
invitation.
Thanks, Julian.
It was nice
All right,
meeting
good
you.
luck.